Have you ever had a feeling of déjà vu so strong it felt real? Or heard stories about kids who remember things they couldn't possibly know? Well, today we're diving headfirst into that strange and fascinating world of past life memories to explore what might really be going on. It's wild, but this whole thing often starts with children. They'll talk about another family, another house, sometimes even another way they died. And they do it with this startling intensity that feels completely real. You can just tell this isn't some made-up story. To them, the emotions are as raw and genuine as any other memory they have. And that right there is our central question. Where do these incredibly vivid memories come from? Are we looking at echoes of a life lived before? Or is there something else, something just as mysterious, at play deep inside the human mind? Okay, so first things first, let's get a handle on the core phenomenon itself. We're not talking about vague feelings here. We're talking about what researchers call past life experiences, where people report shockingly specific details, names, places, events from a life that is definitely not their own. It's a real puzzle, one that makes you question everything you thought you knew about memory and who we are. So how on earth do you even begin to study something like this? Well, the most common tool, and let's be honest, the most controversial one, is hypnosis. Now, forget everything you've seen in stage shows. In a clinical setting, hypnosis is actually just a state of really deep, focused attention. Think about a time you were so lost in a book or a movie that the whole world just melted away. That's pretty much it. It's a totally normal state of mind. This process, it's called hypnotic regression, is actually pretty methodical. First, you get the person into a state of deep relaxation. Then you use guided imagery, like picturing yourself going down an escalator, to deepen that focus. And finally, the hypnotist makes the suggestion to travel backward in time, back to when you were 15, then 5, and then to a time before this life ever began. And this is where things get really weird, because this process has produced some absolutely baffling results, the kind that builds a pretty compelling case that something extraordinary might be going on. Let me tell you about one of the most famous cases. It involves a person known only as L. Under hypnosis, she started recalling the life of a woman named Antonia who lived in 16th century Spain. At first, it sounds like pure fantasy, but then the details started pouring out. And this is the part that is just incredible, the sheer obscurity of the information. LD recalled these specific, verifiable facts. I'm not talking about general history here. We're talking names of executed priests, details of maritime law, information so niche it could only be found buried in local Spanish archives. Researchers literally spent years checking over 100 of these details, and you know what? They couldn't find a single error. This quote from the philosopher William James just nails the argument perfectly. The idea is you don't need thousands of cases you can't explain. If just one white crow, one case like Antonia, that genuinely cannot be explained by normal means, turns out to be real, it forces us to question that fundamental rule that all our memories have to come from our current lifetime. But, of course, you knew there was a but coming, right? There's another side to this story. So let's dig into the main scientific counter-argument. And this is the critical fork in the road. Is the mind really tapping into some ancient past? Or is it just accessing its own hidden files from this life? The leading psychological explanation has this fantastic name, cryptomnesia. It literally means hidden memory. It's what happens when we soak up information from a book, a documentary, a story someone told us, and then we completely forget where we got it. Years later, that info bubbles back up, but our brain doesn't tag it as something I learned. It presents it as something I experienced. So let's put these two big ideas head to head. Reincarnation says the source is a consciousness that survived death. Cryptomnesia argues that no, the source is forgotten information from this life, which our own minds then reconstruct. One is paranormal, the other is a known, if pretty strange, quirk of how normal memory works. And we actually have a perfect, almost textbook example of cryptomnesia in action. This case of a woman known as Miss C. Under hypnosis, she vividly recalled a life as Blanche Poynings in the 14th century. The details were spot on historically, and it was looking like another White Crow case. Until, by pure chance, someone found the source. Blanche was a character in a historical novel Miss C had read as a kid and totally forgotten about. Her subconscious mind had taken that raw material and woven it into what felt like a deeply real past life. Then you've got the sociocognitive theory. This idea suggests it's not a memory at all, hidden or otherwise, but more like a form of creative role-playing. When you're in that highly suggestive state of hypnosis, your mind constructs a story based on the hypnotist's subtle cues, your own beliefs, and a whole lifetime of cultural stuff you've absorbed. It's not like you're lying, it's a fantasy that just feels incredibly real in that moment. Okay, so where does all this leave us? Well, this whole debate actually forces us to ask a much, much deeper question. See, whether you lean towards reincarnation or cryptomnesia, this whole mystery tells us something profound about the here and now. It shows us that the line between memory, imagination, and our very sense of self is way, way blurrier than we like to think. And this quote just gets right to the heart of it. Our memory isn't some perfect video recorder, just playing back the past. It's an active, creative process. Every single time we remember something, we are literally recreating it, coloring it with our current feelings and what we know now. So in the end, maybe the mystery of past lives isn't really about who we were. Maybe it's about what we are. It really challenges us to ask, is my memory a perfect file cabinet of facts? Or is it maybe the greatest, most creative story my mind will ever tell? And if so, where does that story truly come from?